If you are reading this letter, it means you have less than 24 hours left. That single sentence was the first thing Alexei's wife read aloud when she tore open the brittle envelope that had arrived without warning. The letter looked older than anyone in the family remembered receiving through the mail. Its edges were yellow, its paper soft, as if soaked once in water and left to dry in dust. The stamp was blurred, dated 2005, and the name on the front carried their current address, though the apartment block hadn't even existed when the letter was supposedly sent. Alexei stared at it like an artifact dug up from someone else's grave. But it wasn't addressed to strangers. It was meant for them, his family. And whoever had written it seemed to know exactly where to strike. "Tomorrow an accident will happen near your home," the letter continued in a hurried hand. "If you stay, you will not live to see the day after. Leave before the clock strikes midnight. Alexei, you will be the first." His daughter Anna laughed too quickly, the kind of laugh that has to push fear out of the room or drown in it. "What is this, some old prank?" His wife didn't laugh. She folded the letter carefully, as if afraid any abrupt move might wake something sleeping inside. Alexei took it back and read twice more. There were no names of the sender, only a final line scrolled at the bottom. "Room 27. Don't ignore this again." The word "again" stuck like a fishbone in his throat. He searched his memory for anything that might fit, an old apartment, a classroom, a hospital room, but nothing landed, and the more he tried, the further it slid away. Night fell early, pressing its ear to the windows. The tram bells down the road clanged dull and slow, the sound of iron arguing with iron. He felt as if the city itself had shifted half a degree out of alignment. At dinner they argued softly. His wife insisted they were not going to flee their home because a ghost from 2005 had opinions about tomorrow. Anna said she'd stay at a friend's place anyway. Exams, group study, fewer parental eyes. Alexei said nothing. He pretended to watch a late-night talk show while he reread the letter by the light of his phone, thumb following each sentence the way your thumb follows a scar. Shortly before midnight, the power in their building blinked, hummed, then died altogether. The hallway filled with whispers and phone flashlights. When the lights returned a few minutes later, Alexei had already decided. "Pack a small bag," he told his wife. "We're going to your sister's for the night." She stared at him. "You don't believe this." "I don't know what I believe. I know I'll sleep better if you're not here." She agreed, not because she believed the letter, but because she believed his fear. By 11:30, he had walked her to the taxi and watched the taillights dissolve into the wet street. He didn't follow. Something in that last line had jammed behind his ribs. "Room 27. Don't ignore this again." He waited until the clock on his phone rolled over to 000, then put on his coat and went out toward the tram line. The city at midnight was a museum of locked doors. Fog collected in the low places, pooling at curbs and seeping under benches. Ahead, a maintenance crew had fenced off a section of track. A generator throbbed. Sparks stitched the dark like impatient constellations. One of the workers waved Alexei away without looking up. "Closed. Go home." "What exactly are you doing here?" Alexei asked. "Switch repairs. Box 27 is sticking again." Alexei's skin tightened. Box 27. He walked the perimeter of the fencing, reading the hand-painted numbers on the signal cases, until he found a dull metal cabinet with 27 stenciled on the door. The lock hung open. Inside, the lever was wrapped with a warning tag, "Do not operate." There was a smell of hot dust and oil, the smell of things that had been asked to do their jobs for too long. He took a photo. When he returned to the workers to ask another question, they were gone. The generator still pulsed softly, but the men and their tools had slipped into the fog like a scene dismissed from a dream. On the way home, near the post office, he noticed light in a basement window. The sign above a side door read, "Dead Letter Office, Room 27. He had passed this building 1,000 times and never noticed the sign. The letter warmed in his pocket as if it had a pulse. He rang. An old clerk opened, a narrow man whose white eyebrows met above the nose like a single feather. The man regarded the envelope in Alexei's hand as one antiquarian recognizes another. "Not many people visit this late," the clerk said. "You look like someone who lost a message and found it again." "I received a letter dated 20 years ago," Alexei said. "It mentions this room." The clerk nodded once, as if he'd been expecting that exact sentence. He led Alexei through rows of metal shelves holding the city's failed conversations. Letters misaddressed, letters unclaimed, letters with smeared ink and lost intentions. In the far corner, under a hanging bulb, the clerk opened a drawer labeled 27. Inside were half a dozen envelopes with the same slanting handwriting as the one Alexei carried. All were addressed to Alexei's current address. All were stamped 2005. "We keep the ones that never find their home," the clerk said. "Your address didn't exist when these arrived from the sorting center. Some came back, some sat, some we tucked away because the system had nowhere else to put them." He slid one envelope toward Alexei. On its back, a note had been added in pencil. "Deliver when possible." The signature beneath it was a surname and initials, A.S. Ivanov. Alexei held the envelope up beside the one he had brought. The handwriting was identical, but the flourishes, the pressure of the pen, the impatient slashes at the end of words, they were his. The room shifted. The floor did not move, the shelves did not move, but he felt his balance tilt as if someone had relocated the horizon a little to the left. "It's not possible," he said. "And yet," the clerk answered. "Would you like to read the others?" Alexei read. The letters were fragments of the same warning, the script jagged, the voice desperate. Each urged the Ivanov family, his family, to leave before a date that had long ago evaporated. Each mentioned the tram line and a fault with Box 27. Each ended with the same plea, "Don't ignore this again." Outside, the fog had thickened into a fine rain. He didn't go back to his apartment. He went to stand by the tram crossing where Box 27 kept its secrets and tried not to read omens in every headlight. At dawn, the street filled with routine. Routine makes people brave because it lets them pretend today is a copy of yesterday. The bakery opened. Schoolchildren made islands of laughter at the curb. Workers in orange vests returned and did what workers do. They argued about coffee and shrugged at instructions. He phoned the transport authority, reported a potential hazard at the crossing, mentioned the maintenance tag, the stuck lever. The woman on the line promised to pass it on. Promises on telephones are soft currency. He stayed anyway. At 8:03, a horn sounded. Too long, too late. A delivery truck, its brakes screaming in a language of hot metal, slid toward the crossing with the inevitability of a sentence you can hear finishing itself. The tram bell answered. The gate began to lower and stopped halfway. The lever in Box 27 ticked once and stuck. Alexei ran. He didn't think to be brave, he thought to be specific. He grabbed the nearest child by the backpack straps and dragged her back as the truck sheared the gate and fishtailed. He shouted at the pedestrians to move. He waved at the tram driver who saw him, understood, braked, and still could not rewrite all the variables. The impact was an argument none of them could win. Glass became weather. Metal folded. Sound forgot it had limits and spilled out into the open morning. When the world settled, what remained were sirens and the frantic choreography of those who find themselves suddenly necessary. There were injuries and shock and the terrible arithmetic of what almost happened. But in the gap between almost and happened,
Alexei discovered a new measurement of time. He discovered that 10 seconds can be a lifetime and an afterlife both. He discovered that you can be the first without being the last.